Hey everyone, Matt Brady, the Carolina Mortgage Coach, here with your latest episode of Behind the Closing Table. And today I am here with Robert McClure from McClure Group Realty. I've known him for a few years and he's got a unique background. I believe he came from law enforcement to now into the real estate world. So, Robert, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Thanks. Robert McClure, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So yeah, you said just that. Worked for CMPD for roughly 6 years. Quit cold turkey after the great riots of 2020. Was told I was not the brightest person for getting into real estate, and that was probably true. But had a lot of success in year one and never looked back from there. So here we are now going on 6 years later. So I've almost been in real estate as long as I was in law enforcement.
Awesome. And, we were talking before the call of how I've seen your career and your model change. So tell a little bit about how your journey got started, where you went, and, where you are now.
Sure. So after the riots and all that was going on in law enforcement in 2020, I had just come off of 16 days straight, 12 to 16-hour days, and right into our now oldest child's first birthday, which I almost missed. We were going to the Outer Banks, and it was like, are you going to make it there? We might not cut you loose. You know how it is. You come from the field too. Um, Went to the beach, which is the best place to reflect, I think, and decided there I will do literally anything but this. I will sell cars. I will work at Quick Trip. I will do anything. Had a partner of mine on my shift, and one of his classmates had just quit and went to real estate and was doing pretty good. The story told to me was that he had a Lamborghini. That ended up not being true, but it was enough to get me to go get my license. And got licensed then in April of that year, which was 2021, and spent the first probably 30 days or so trying to find a brokerage that would pay me a good salary. Realized that's not really the case, and Redfin wasn't really even then what Redfin is now. So I went to EXP because that's where he was. Ended up selling 57 homes my first year just by figuring out that I wasn't good at what I was doing, but I could be the cheapest. So flipped FISBOs for 1% commission and made a killing. Sold 57 homes and then went on to lead the number 4 team in the state with EXP with only 6 agents. Expanded to South Carolina, and then in year 3 made the bright and brilliant bad decision to quit EXP and start my own firm. And I was going to be Gary Keller and have 150,000 agents and take the world by storm. Got licensed in Tennessee and Georgia and hired 60 agents and absolutely hated life. Spent 40 hours a week overseeing other people, no time doing my own business. No, I had a job. So I traded in freedom for a job again, and then decided to go back to the single agent model with some support staff, which is what I have now, and was just named the number 1 agent in North and South Carolina by number of homes sold last year. So pretty happy with where we're at, and a whole lot more free time for my now 3 children, and that's where we are today.
Awesome. It's a great journey, a lot of peaks and valleys, but you seem happy and, being very successful right now. So normally we wait to the end, but this will probably be a great time to start right off the bat. Since you've seen so many different things, what would be your recommendation to someone getting into real estate?
Just hustle. I will say that it's never been easier to be different. Every agent and lender and attorney and everybody just seems the same. And now AI is making that even worse. And when I got into real estate, people told me to stay away from FISBOs, never discount your commission, all the things I decided to do anyway and stood out. And now if I look at a marketing package or at the way somebody else is doing something in real estate, I try to do the complete and total opposite. And that's just it. And then hustle agents, it just seems that the general stigma there is that it's a part-time job or a hobby, and it's not. It can be more than the full-time thing when you're starting out, but it's definitely a job. And so it would be to hustle and to be different. And honestly, there's not enough of that in this industry at all.
Mhm. Do you think it's wise for a new agent to join a team to begin with to get that experience, or go like you did and jump into the deep end, or you think it depends on the person?
Yeah, it's a loaded question for me because I like to do things differently. And for me, I could never have been on a team. It was bad hard enough for me being at a regular brokerage. I would say for most folks, yes, it makes the most sense to join a team. You're going to pay more splits and make less money your first year, but you're going to figure out what you're doing. And I always had put it to my agents this way when they were considering us or a different brokerage. And I would say, look at myself who leads this firm and what I do every year, and look at who you're considering. And if their production and what they're doing every year isn't at or above what your goal is, then your ceiling is never like your ceiling is there. So
Hmm.
if you do partner with somebody or join a team, find somebody who's doing more than what you could ever dream of. And then when you land underneath them, you're going to be just fine.
Awesome. So, you led North and South Carolina in transactions last year. If we were to ask your past clients what makes MGR different, what would you hope they say about you?
Well, Google tells me I'm overconfident and overly aggressive, and I agree with both of those. And I tell my clients that's my greatest weakness and my greatest strength at the same time, because I think I can sell anything, sell it for more than what you can, and I can do it faster than what people do. But just diligence, even though that high number of transactions with my support staff, we're checking in every day. We're making sure that there's not a document missed. We are meticulous in our process. We are measuring homes, getting detailed floor plans, doing dollhouse renderings of these properties, 4K AI videos that go viral. We're just doing all the things that you would expect and then some, targeted marketing versus your traditional methods, and just all these things. And our clients at the end of it, like they'll go into a relationship with me thinking I'm going to be too busy for them. And I have to kind of argue that sometimes that like, you don't want to be an agents only client, I promise you.
Hmm.
And because of economies of scale, we can repeat this process efficiently. And at the end of it, they're surprised with how much I check in with them. They have my personal cell number. We still text every day. We check in with our clients, and that I was a real human being and treated them that way as well.
Awesome. What would you say in, your years of experience here? What's one mistake you see buyers repeatedly make, and one you would say you see people selling their house repeatedly make?
Both of those can come back to being overly emotional, which I think comes from not setting realistic expectations. And so on both sides of that. And so when a seller thinks that they're going to get a full price offer for their home in this market with no concessions, not paying a buyer's agent, not having to deal with repairs, they tell you it's as is, or a buyer thinking because the market's a little slower, we're going to get a $400,000 house for 275 with 15,000 concessions and all these things. That's when you start getting tension, because then if you don't set them up that, okay, we got a good deal on the house, maybe we won't get any repairs during that period. Or if you don't tell your sellers, hey, this is an FHA loan, we might have to make some repairs for the appraisal. Then when that time comes, you can either deal with the hard part in the beginning and it's easier, or deal with it later and then you just drop the ball. And that's
Mhm.
it. Just being overly emotional, which I think is tied to not being prepared.
Yeah, definitely. Is it a different conversation with your first time home buyers that you deal with rather than your resale buyers? Or how does that
Yes, but
conversation?
only because I think it's so segregated nowadays. I think you have your first time home buyers, which are tending to latch on the houses for a long time. And then you have your investor and hedge buyers. And so it's somebody who's either never bought a house before or somebody who's bought 75. And your guy
Mhm.
that bought 75 doesn't want any details. He's just like, this is what I want, get it done, yes or no. And your first time home buyer is like, I won't go over 300,000 for that home. Somebody comes in and offers 305, and then afterwards they're like, oh, I would have offered 306 or 310. We should have done that to begin with. And so, yes, it is explaining the process. And like for your first time home buyers, it's a lot of letting them fail on a property or two, usually until they realize, okay, we got to get serious and this is what it still takes, versus your repeat buyers, even those that are trading up from a prior home, they treat it more like a business transaction and not like such a big life change.
Hmm. I think one of the growing uh, markets that's, I don't think gets educated as much that, what advice would you give to first time sellers? There's a lot of people that bought their first house over the last 5 years, and now they're coming to the point where a life change, family size change, job change, and they're selling a house for the first time. And that's a completely different experience than when you bought your house. It's total different conversations, totally different dealing with inspections and repairs on the other end. How do you handle, first time sellers that, maybe bought at a completely different time where you had to bid over ask and bridge appraisal gaps and do all that, to where now we're in a different market now and they're selling for the first time?
That's difficult because like you hit it on the head there. So a lot of folks who bought 4 or 5 years ago, they're selling for at or below what they bought for. And that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
tough to swallow for them. But also having the conversation that there's not a person on this planet who thinks their house is worth what they do or that appreciates their improvements. They're not going to get dollar for dollar because they have
Right.
solar panels or they just clean the carpets or painted. That doesn't equate to 20, 30, $40,000 in value. It is navigating what, like baseball cards, right? They're worth what somebody
Mm-hmm.
will pay for them. And an appraisal, they're all over the place nowadays. And so really it's finding the right buyer, making that buyer fall in love with the house like they did, and really just, again, setting those expectations that your first offer is probably going to be your best offer. If somebody comes in a little under asking, we're not going to say, I only want to counter that because they can kick
Mm-hmm.
rocks. It's just working with the buyers at hand. And we always try to set or create a package for a buyer and a buyer's agent when they come through. I intentionally don't put disclosures or anything in the MLS, so that agent has to call me. And
Mm-hmm.
then we start saying, hey, this is what the seller would like to see. You do XYZ, the deal gets done today. We always bring a cash offer to our sellers from one of our hedge buyers, which we say, hey, we have a cash offer in hand, creates that urgency. And so we help our sellers out a lot on that front. But there's still a lot of times where they just get fatigued. And if they've sat for 90 or 120 days, they're going to just pull their house off the market and be defeated. You could get a full price offer and they're just over it because it is emotional clearing out of the house,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're living there. You have children, dogs, taking them out for a walk, vacuuming every day. It's just a lot to prepare for selling a house. We just did it about a year ago ourselves, and my wife said she'll never do it again.
Yeah, especially the emotional side that you talked about, getting too emotional. This was your first house. So it might have been the house you raised your kids in, and then unfortunately that sentimental does not have a dollar value to a potential buyer.
Well, our kids
Uh,
still make us drive by our old house once a week just to check on it and make sure it's still there. And they're like, oh, we love that house. We love our new house, but we really love that house just because it was their first one.
yeah. And, talking about that, what are some renovations or changes people listing their house think, what are the top things that actually do give you value when you're looking to resell, and some things that you may think, but they don't really make a difference, or you're not going to get that investment back into the
I think
sale?
people are finally coming off the solar panel thing. I think people are realizing that they're just going to take the loss on that. And people who did it was a bad decision because people don't want to pay off your solar loan when they buy your house. Um, there's kind of things that are mandatory. You should paint your house no matter what before you sell it. It just makes it look better. Clean your carpets or replace them if they're super old. Make sure your house has updated flooring. But then kitchens, you're always going to get your money back for the most part. I'm weird. I do think pools add a pretty good value to a house if they're in ground and nice and well kept, especially in North Carolina. Um, but just weird random things you can do too that don't cost a lot. Good landscaping, paint your
Mhm.
front door or change your front door. Um, Make sure your windows are cleaned. Or if they're like 150-year-old windows, it's expensive, but replace your windows. You'll get a good ROI. We see a lot of roofs being 30, 35 years old on these houses that people are looking at. And that's another thing too, is that just keeping up with your maintenance goes a long way. That's kind of going by the wayside nowadays. People aren't just generally upkeeping their
Mhm.
homes. And so you can get ahead of it a lot by just maintaining your house. And then when the time comes to sell, you don't have to do anything crazy to get it prepped.
Yeah. I made a video on this last week where I was like, when the first thing you should do after you buy your house is create a Gmail for your house, 123, your street address, put all your receipts in there, put all your maintenance in there. And then there's your Carfax for your house to prove that you've maintained it, to
And
prove
people do
that you've
that for
done
their
all that.
car. You open their glove box, there's every oil change receipt they ever had, but they can't remember the last time that they changed their air filters in their house.
Yeah, exactly. So it's most people's biggest assets that they have that attributes to most people's wealth. Take care of it. You want to get top dollar for your house and you have to take care of your house top dollar. So
Exactly right.
definitely. With you, being covering North and South Carolina, are there any hidden gems or you think underrated places to live that people should be looking at?
I don't want to let the secret out because everybody's already moving to the Carolinas, but it fluctuates a lot here. For a while there was a bad stigma on the coast. People didn't want to invest in the coast because of turnover and erosion and all the craziness there. We're doing really well at the beach properties now. I think a lot of that happened since Helene in Western Carolina. That used to be our hidden gem, and now people
Yeah.
don't really want to touch Western Carolina unless they're getting a steal. The Triad is always booming. I think a lot of people are discovering how nice Winston-Salem, the Yadkin Valley, Greensboro, those areas are, and that you're still an hour and a half from Charlotte and Raleigh at the
Hmm.
same time. Then there's always your low country places. Columbia is always going to have high turnover because of the military bases in towns like Fayetteville, but then you have your beach communities. You have your Beaufort, South Carolina. You have your Topsails, your Cherry Grove beaches, your smaller off the beaten path places that are starting to get more expensive, but people haven't fully
Hmm.
discovered them yet.
Yeah. And, do you have a lot of investor clients that invest in South Carolina, or do the tax hits really shy people to North Carolina side?
We do. And, for a long time, like I said, they wouldn't touch anything beach wise. South Carolina is still tough. They have your out of state investor taxes, which make things difficult. And for that reason, we're seeing a lot of Wrightsville Beach, Topsail, Wilmington area stuff. Wilmington's always gone crazy. And honestly, you're seeing a lot of sales in Myrtle Beach. There's just so many condos as those HOA fees continue to rise. But
Hmm.
you're seeing more investment in not Myrtle Beach areas of South Carolina. So you're seeing like Hilton Head, you're seeing Beaufort, South Carolina. You're seeing the islands down there. Those spots where it used to always just be Myrtle Beach.
Awesome. So, one thing, you deal with a lot of people, you do a lot of transactions. It's a very competitive industry. There's a lot of agents, but I saw a stat that I think over half agents have done four or less transactions this year, and a good portion of that haven't done any. So, if someone's social media may make it seem like they're busy and doing all these deals, if you're a buyer, what's something that you should ask a potential buyer's agent? And if you have a listing, what's something that you recommend asking the listing agents that you're interviewing?
So there is a lot of similarity amongst agents nowadays. And so we get in these situations sometimes we'll be head to head with another agent for a buyer or a seller. And I always say, Netflix has made it so easy to appear successful with the copycatting of Selling Sunset and those shows that you can't trust Instagram or Facebook. I pull receipts. I'm like, hey, I wouldn't badmouth another agent, but you deserve to compare apples to apples. So let me know their name and I'll show you what we've both done in the last 12 months. You can see our days on market, how much we get for our homes, because we average 104 to 108% of market value still. You can see how many houses they've sold. You can see where they've sold. And then the only part we ever struggle with, because I do sell so much in so many places, is me not being the local agent in places. And I'll tell them, look, there's nobody in your town who's not going to know your house is for sale. You don't want the person that's going to go knock on your neighbor's door because they know it's for sale. You want the agent with the biggest reach. And
Mhm.
it's just that. And so that's how we win a lot of our battles.
I think that's a very underestimated skill to have is the the contact list in your real estate agent's cell phone of Who do they have to reach out to? Who do they have that has financing or creative financing? Who do they have that deals with investors or that might have someone that, is looking for, or even for your buyers, have a listings where you can access off market properties or have a list of off market properties or contacts that you can reach through that some agents might not have because they just don't have the experience or the network yet.
Or they've been doing this for 50 years. We get that end of it too. And we send out 100 to 200 cash offers per month, just randomly to on market properties for one of our hedge buyers. And without fail, 2 to 3 times a week, we get reported to the real estate boards. This is a scam because it's a random cash offer. They haven't seen the listing. I'm not presenting this to my seller. And I'm like, well, real estate's done a little differently nowadays, especially for investors. Like, you should still probably help your seller out and present it. And it's just that. Then you start getting into the weeds of subject to seller financing, different ways to buy a home. And if your agent doesn't have all that, or have 4, 5, 6 lending contacts, 4 or 5 attorneys, people they've worked with and know they shouldn't work with, then you're not hiring the right person. Because if you just hire the person that they've worked with one lender for 30 years, one attorney, they're in their office, and that's it, then your house isn't going to go.
Is there's a lot of myths in the real estate world right now. Is there one that still bugs you that you have to deal with?
There are a lot of myths. I would say the biggest one is that we don't deserve commission because we just put a sign in the yard and say a prayer. And I'd say for a lot of agents that might be true, but for the good ones who sell a lot of homes, you're not selling a lot of homes by just getting a listing and praying for it.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into outside of, or we even building off that, you might do that with this question is, what do you think people misunderstand or have a misconception about being a real estate agent or the life of a real estate agent?
That we're part-timers and that we essentially get paid to just facilitate paperwork or open a door. And we used to say this when I was in policing. I'm sure you guys said it on the other side of the academy over there too, the dark side. That the reason, like, people who think that cops don't do anything overnight and they wake up and have no idea what happened last night, that we're lazy. No, we did a really good job. And I'm the same way in my business. I tell my clients, I'm not going to call you unless I have good or bad news. I'm not going to waste your time. I don't have to visit your house 15 times to do a CMA beforehand. I don't have to do any of that. So the fact that you made it through a whole transaction and only heard from me 2 or 3 times for the pertinent dates and inspections and things like that doesn't mean that we didn't do anything and we don't deserve our money. It means we did a lot and you didn't know about it, which is a good thing. Because if I blew them up all day, every day, then I'm being a bad agent.
Yeah, it's a same thing on the lending side. If something pops up, I'm going to try to fix it or deal with it or call the real estate agent and get it dealt with so we don't have to stress you out. Now, if it's something that we need you to do, that's a different conversation. We don't hide from good or bad news, but if there's something that we can get figured out without stressing you out, that's part of what you're paying for in this process. So, if someone was walking away from the closing table, what's one thing you want them to remember about the experience of working with MGR?
So you want them to feel good, whether it's a buyer or a seller, especially in this market. They have to feel like they've won something. And so we've heard this a lot in the early parts of my career, and I think it's because of the way we would phrase things, maybe being a little too blunt. But like, if you go to your seller and say the buyers, the appraisal came in low, they need $5,000 off the price. They assume that's you working for the buyer and you're trying to hit the seller over the head. And so being more tactful in making the sellers and buyers feel good about the necessary parts of business, right? Like, same as in first responder world, you have the officers or the firefighters that show up. They have no personality. They're to the point and they get into a fight 3 seconds into being there. Or you have the guys that can sit there and talk all night and make best friends and talk somebody into handcuffs without issue. Same deal in the real estate world. Yeah. It's how you say things. And so at the end of it, we try to make fans. We don't try to make friends. And so I don't want them to think I'm their best friend. I don't want them to think I'm just a cold robot. I want them to be a fan of our process and to feel good about what they did. And that's why they're going to come back, because they feel good about the transaction.
Awesome. So, as we get to the end of this episode, being the number one in transactions last year, what's the goal for this year?
We never have a goal. And that's
Okay.
crazy to say, but I just always like to do better than I did before. And that for me, I found out is not just going out and trying to grit my way to more business, it's just being more efficient. Because if I can get one deal squared away and put those fires out more efficiently, we can take on more business and go to the next person and give them the attention they need. And that's what I pride myself in, giving everybody the same amount of attention, no matter how busy we get. So we can always just keep expanding. But we did 165 transactions last year. I just don't like to go backwards. I'll put it that way.
Okay. So outside of real estate, you mentioned you have 3 kids now. Outside of wrangling the kids, what keeps you busy or what do you guys enjoy doing?
We're a huge Disney family. We always go to Disney once a year. My kids love that. And my third, our son, he's only 5 weeks old, so he was just
Okay.
born. So we're grounded for a little bit, but we're big beach people. We always go to the beach. My wife's mom lives in Myrtle, so we try to visit her when we can down there and take advantage of that. We love going to the movies right now because it's hot and we got a newborn at home.
Mhm.
So I take the 2 older ones, my girls, out to the theater. We go to the swimming pool, we fish. We have a farm, so really just anything outdoors.
Awesome. So what's the next movie you guys are looking forward to?
The next move we're looking forward to in
Movie,
our personal
movie.
life or as a
No,
company?
movie.
Movie. I thought you said
Movie.
move. Okay. Well, we just saw Toy Story 5, so highly
Okay, yeah.
recommend that. We just saw the new Minions movie, which isn't my favorite. I believe there's a rumor of a new Elsa or Frozen movie coming out, so I'm sure I'll get drug into that. But just anything Disney that hits the theaters, we're usually there.
Okay. Yeah, we saw Toy Story 5. That was my 3-year-old's first time at the movies. She did pretty well. But
Not that age. Yeah.
yeah, but she's a big fan of the Marvel like superhero movies. So she's ready for
Lucky you.
Spider-Man and you wouldn't think it, a 3-year-old, but she likes that and she is on a Nightmare Before Christmas binge right now where she just wants to watch Jack all the time now.
That's my oldest to this day. Sally is her person, and she carries around this little stitched up zombie doll, and she absolutely loves it.
Yeah. So, if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to reach out to you and your team?
We're easy to find. You Google my name or McClure Group Realty, we're there. We always come up. You Google top agents, we're there. But McClureGroupRealty.com or we're McClure Group Realty on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Awesome. Well, everyone, this is your latest episode of Behind the Closing Table. Thank you, Robert, for jumping on today. You gave a lot of insight for buyers, sellers, and agents in the industry for them to take back and make some notes on. We'll see everyone the next time. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me.